Well, how exactly do false flags materialize? How does the shadow government carry out these clandestine attacks, or not so clandestine as in the case of Bondi Beach in Australia and Brown University? Well, Kevin Shipp spent 17 years in the CIA, and when he quit a number of years ago, he's been on a crusade to expose how these shadowy operations unfold. His newest book is called Twilight of the Shadow Government. It's an absolute page-turner, and it's shocking, to say the least. I highly encourage you all to read it. But I wanted to have Kevin on today to talk about the weekend's events and everything that we've seen, as now a lot of weird occurrences are popping up. Like, Kevin, great to see you, by the way, but like Google searches in Israel, before the shooting happens for the name of the shooter. Like, okay, are they getting sloppy? I mean, but anyway, that's just one high level thought process here. But maybe you can talk about how these like false flags actually unfold. Maybe how long and months ahead of time are these things being put together before they're actually carried out?
Well, they are planned for months, and if you notice, going all the way back to 9/11, and I have my own thoughts about that. An investigation, a legitimate criminal investigation, was never done there. So I disagree with the 9/11 report. But one of the things when the CIA plans these operations is they always choose a boogeyman. It's always got to be one person, because if it's just one person, it's not a conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And law enforcement or Congress can't go into the conspiracy of more than one person if there's just one boogeyman. So if you can select your boogeyman and you can hit him with chemicals or directed energy weapons or something to derange his mind, and the human brain is all electric and is very easily programmable, sadly, but it is. So you find your boogeyman and you program that boogeyman to kill. He or she goes out and does the dastardly act, and then immediately, like Osama bin Laden, the agency will say, we got him. There's the boogeyman. We got the boogeyman. It's all over. No conspiracy. Nothing to see here. That's how they do it. And if you look, it's always one person, one boogeyman, who had no indication previously that they had any murders or even criminal tendencies. And all of a sudden, like Tyler Robinson, despite all the facts that don't add up with Charlie Kirk's murder, there's the boogeyman. This is the guy who did it, despite all the evidence that how could he possibly have done this with dismantling his rifle and putting it back together and all that stuff. No. He's the boogeyman. He did it. We got him. No conspiracy. Nothing to see here. That's how they do it.
Well, and there's so many questions I have about what unfolded in Australia, because in the months leading up to this attack, there were a number of reports about, as Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone has reported back in February, there were a number of reports about operations or paid actors making threats against different Jewish institutions. And those paid actors, we never know exactly where the money's coming from. Where are these paid actors? Who are these rabble-rousers? And of course, immediately after the shooting, Benjamin Netanyahu inserts himself into this entire operation. Mossad is now in Australia assisting with the investigation, and immediately they said Iran is behind this. So you talk about a boogeyman here. The boogeyman is Iran, because they desperately want us to go to war with Iran. So, yes. I mean, but it seems like they got pretty lazy with this one. I mean, it seems pretty blatantly obvious to anyone with a mind or brain.
As is the case with human nature, the more arrogant they get, the more stupid they get. And some of these operations and this disinformation is almost ridiculous, but they put it out there anyway. This horrific, awful thing on Bondi Beach there, all of a sudden Mossad's on the scene. It's like, what do you got to do with this? This is the Australian government, Australian people. What in the world does Mossad have to do with any of this, and why are they there? Now, Mossad has no ethics. I've been followed by Mossad when I traveled to Israel, doing security for an international speaker in Mossad. Since I was former CIA, followed me everywhere I went. They will do anything to expand Israel's power, and they have no no walls, no barriers. There's nothing against murder, assassination, mass kill, anything. None of that is in Mossad at all. It's whatever it takes, and that's what we're seeing here with Australia. They're inserting themselves into this horrific act, and the question is, what the heck are you doing there? What the heck? Netanyahu comes out with this statement, and once again, here comes the boogeyman. I mean, we always have to look for the boogeyman, and here we go. Boogeyman is Iran. Iran did it, and Mossad is now building this case that this was done against the nation of Israel. False flags are common in the CIA's playbook since Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin, where the ships that allegedly attacked U.S. boats didn't exist. They were painted on the radar. So it's an operational technique with the CIA. And that, as unethical and immoral as the CIA is, you can take Mossad and multiply that by 50. They have no guardrails.
And, of course, there's very little daylight, as you and I have talked before, there's very little daylight between the CIA and Mossad. So when these operations are being carried out, when we say Mossad, what we really mean is the CIA and MI6. Yeah. Really? I mean, they're all in cahoots, right? They are. Yeah, they're brothers and sisters. No question about it. Especially the Mossad and the CIA. The CIA considers Mossad its chief intelligence asset in the Middle East, and they're woven in with Mossad, like I said, like sister organizations. Well, they are sister organizations, and so when the Mossad does something, many times the CIA is involved, except for when Mossad actually targets the CIA itself to try to steal information from the agency. So it's a frenemies kind of relationship where they both connect with they share intelligence on a massive high-level scale with high-level clearances that the U.S. doesn't do with any other country. So essentially they are joined at the hip. We're not going to show it here on the show because he's covered in blood, but an individual who says he was in Israel on October 7th. He's there. Suddenly, he shows up in Sydney, and he's also there for this horrific attack. He's taking selfies of himself covered in blood, and he said, I survived October 7th, and now I'm here, and it's all very convenient. Do you see similarities with other false flag attacks, individuals like this who are just happen to be there? They go on social media, and they're sort of pushing these narratives?
Yes, absolutely. And it's happened in other killings and tragedies just like this, where the same person, Charlie Kirk assassination is an example, with a fellow that was yelling, I did it, I took the shot. And he shows up at Charlie Kirk when he's been seen at other events. When you start seeing the same people show up at completely different, unrelated events, something's going on.
Maybe you can just talk about, I feel like false flags, because we call them out here as much as we can on the show, and I will admit, we have sources telling us a couple of weeks ago that there was likely to be a very big or multiple false flag events heading into Christmas. To keep your head on a swivel, they were getting reports of this, and so I kept that under my hat, wasn't reporting it, and here we go. And I don't know, and apparently there's going to be more of these false flag attacks in the coming days as well to try to push us to war with Iran, of course. But are they just getting so careless now? I feel like we're able to see it. I mean, if you watch our show, like we're not falling for this BS. Right. But do they work? Because you see the mainstream media, you see CNN, you see Axios, they're like, the rise in anti-Semitism led to this attack, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're pushing this narrative on all of us at the mainstream media level. But I feel like maybe that false flag ship has sailed. What do you think? Do they still work?
Well, I mean, they know. They've done a lot of psychological studies on this in the agency. They know that your average American is sitting on the couch watching this, tired and exhausted from working all day, and they're just trying to provide for their family. And the only information they get is from these news programs, from these pipelines. And I'll give you a prime example. And this is just in my view regarding 9/11. After the attacks happened, the Bush administration comes out and they said, we can prove that the terrorist, one of the terrorists was on the plane because we found his passport 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. The The plane was incinerated. Everything on the plane was incinerated. Above and below the plane was incinerated. But this paper passport managed to float down over to Rica. There's a prime example of a stupid piece of disinformation.
There was lava. There was literally lava from the nanothermite that was used in the controlled demolition of the towers. Like nanothermite, like lava flowing. But these paper passports, these things are, man, I want to build my house out of these passports.
That's right. Exactly. Apparently they're like some sort of new material or something.
Right.
But they repeated that lie enough that most Americans are like, oh, okay, we buy it. Because, frankly, Clayton, and they don't teach this in high schools and universities anymore, most people don't practice critical thinking. And that's what we need, is to people to start understanding they need to critically think about this. A paper passport on the street, that's impossible.
Right.
Don't buy it. I mean, but programs like yours and others that are bringing this critical thinking into these things are what people need, because they're not doing it on their own. They're just sitting in front of the TV and being fed this stuff.
You talked about, before I let you go, Kevin, you talked about at the CIA, they've done countless studies on this. So you working at the CIA, you were privy to this. So the CIA was actually studying how they could manipulate the American people through media and through this type of disinformation campaigns. Like, that's part of the CIA's budget? How
to fool
us?
It's a whole program. It's called the Media Liaison Office that they created to propagandize and influence the U.S. news media. It's a whole division. It's a whole program within the CIA. For example, in my case, I'm really bad for CIA recruitment. I'm hurting their recruitment efforts, because I'm not coming out like these other former CIA officers who will teach you how to be a spy. I'm coming out with the facts and the truth. No, you probably don't want to go work there. Like in the director of operations of the National Clandestine Service, unless you want to become a serpent. And I did that for 5 years and then had to recover. We're dealing with something here that is an affront to the United States Constitution, freedom, privacy, like you and I talked about, and it's a monster that's become so powerful that it is, and we talked about this, what I call the shadow government, the CIA's control of our elected government. And so they get away with these things. And they have programs, very intricate programs, on how to control people's thinking and how to put this propaganda out there, especially with complicit news media outlets. And they know that people will believe it.
Right. They run right to CNN or Fox News, and then Fox News does a whole report about the rise of anti-Semitism, and this was an attack on Israeli Jews, but it was in Australia. Okay. And the mockingbird media, the parrot media, just goes along with this BS. And then there are people, like you said, who work hard all day. They come home, they've got maybe 15 minutes of news time that they can watch before they have some dinner, and they see this garbage and they ingest it, and that's why it works, I guess. So I guess false flags still work, right?
Yes, without question. And we're going to see more of them. Yeah.
It's going to make my job even harder, try to discount it, and your job even harder. Kevin, I thank you so much for this. I would encourage everyone, go out and read Kevin's great books. Twilight of the Shadow Government is his newest, his time in the CIA and the shadowy machinations of this deep state. Really, really troubling stuff. Kevin, thank you for exposing all of this. Thank you for your bravery and your patriotism. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. Always a pleasure to be on.